Hi guys, I figured I'd come out here today and do some short stories from our Yosemite trip. So the first one is a little encounter with TSA. Of course, when you're a vlogger, you've got to have you have to figure out how you're going to charge all the batteries for the cameras. And because I was camping at Yosemite, I had to figure out how I was going to do that with no standard power source. So I got a big power bank from, I think it was Goal Zero, and thankfully it wasn't lithium, it was lead acid. So I was able to take that on a plane as a carry-on item, and that was cleared at the airlines beforehand. TSA loved this thing, both on my trip to California and my return trip. It screened in secondary both times, and that's mostly because of the way it shows up on the x-ray. I think it shows up as a solid shadow type of situation. So in Providence on the way out, they actually unpacked the whole thing, tried to figure out what it was, swabbed it, all that stuff. On the return home, however, they just swabbed the box. So that was nice and simple. However, Sacramento TSA did actually inspect my luggage on my return, my checked luggage. So there was a tag on it when I picked that bag up in Providence. Our second story is kind of funny. When I was climbing Half Dome, unbeknownst to me, I got some severe sunburns on the backs of my legs. And if anybody's ever got sunburn on the back of your legs, you know how painful it can be. I spent a good amount of time trying to find some aloe in either the Yosemite Visitor Center area or in the lodge area. And I just wanted plain aloe. And the only place I found it was in a vending machine that didn't work. So I asked a shop employee if they had some aloe, and the only stuff we could find was aloe lotion with cucumber. So it was cucumber scented. And those of you that have ever camped in bear territory know that it can, you're never supposed to have anything scented in your tent. It attracts bears, it can be dangerous. That night I had cucumber scented aloe lotion on my legs, sleeping in the tent, in bear territory. And I started panicking when I started hearing car alarms in the campground going off in the middle of the night. And for anybody that's been to Yosemite, the bears there are very skilled at popping open car doors. So I can only assume that's what I was hearing. So yeah, that was a fun night. Our next thing is squirrels. So of course, when you're in the suburbs, squirrels, they're kind of just annoying. Not a big deal. They get into your bird feeders, stuff like that. Now, when I was first, when I was out at Philmont Scout Ranch in New Mexico in 2008, we actually called the squirrels mini bears. If they could find any trace of food, they would get it. They were just as obnoxious as bears. You had to prepare for them, keep your food by you, all that stuff. And I found it funny climbing Half Dome that the only real big warning that the rangers gave us when they checked our permits was to keep your bags within arm's reach, because the squirrels will chew through the sides of them. I didn't think much of it at the time, but yeah, about 8,000 plus foot elevation, and there were squirrels. And they were definitely investigating every non-natural item they could find for any sign of anything edible. So if you're in the backcountry, watch your edibles and keep away from the squirrels. So one of the first things you come to when you hike to Half Dome is the Mist Trail, and the first big landmark on that trail is Vernal Falls. And Vernal Falls, throughout most of the year in Yosemite, this is a trail that you would take your family to go see a waterfall. And because of when I went, and the fact that they had snow about 2 weeks earlier, the Mist Trail and the Merced River that goes through there was extremely high volume. It made the trail a bit dangerous, actually. Now, I've verified since then that this trail the river isn't as high volume as it was at the time, and it's quite a bit safer now. Families can now go back out on that trail. But just imagine snowmelt water, so water that's probably somewhere in the area of 40 degrees around sunrise, being whipped at you similar to a Class 3 hurricane, Category 3. That was probably one of the toughest parts of my hike. The wind was just whipping coming off the top of the falls, and it was extremely cold. Totally wasn't prepared for it. By the time I got to the top of the falls, where I think they call it the Emerald Pool, I could see in the camera that my lips were blue. It was very cold. So definitely hopefully something that's more to do with this time of year I went, but something I wasn't prepared for at all. So as you guys probably saw from my Half Dome video, or which I think is part 2 of the series, I did find a hiking buddy, Farah. When I was climbing, I was probably about halfway through, I think, of the hike when we crossed paths, and we ended up finishing the whole thing together. Now, we were taking our time. We were in no particular rush to get back to the valley, but Farah had come to Yosemite from Orange County, California with her family. And they were, of course, waiting for her return in the valley. and somehow she had cell service when I didn't. She was texting her family on our return hike, and they got a bit worried when they found out that we wouldn't be back by sundown. We returned about 2 hours after sundown. So we were almost back to the valley when I heard that her family had notified her that they had contacted the park rangers. Now, all I could think of is Jeeps and ATVs and helicopters coming to look for us. At no point were we in any particular danger. I'm a pretty avid outdoorsman. I'm an Eagle Scout as well. I would have never knowingly put somebody else at risk at any point. So I'm just picturing this in my head, being greeted by rangers. They're probably pretty pissed off, to be honest. Luckily, we were close enough to the valley that when we finished, her father was there to pick her up, and he had already talked to the rangers. If you're a family member of somebody that goes out in the backcountry and they don't return exactly at the time that you're expecting, don't panic. Because, I mean, to be honest, you could just be wasting government resources and time. Luckily, we didn't have any particular search and rescue event that occurred. I think the rangers are probably pretty used to this kind of stuff by now. But stay calm. If you're in communication with the person, just get an update of where they are. If they're still moving, they're probably fine. So thanks for joining me, guys, for these quick little stories of our Yosemite trip. I think I'm gonna enjoy the fire here for a little bit. Write your comments down below. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.